Hello, and welcome back to Make It Stick. Let's jump into Anki. 2 flashcards, let's go. What are the 14 claims the authors make in Make It Stick? There's a direct relationship between that effort of retrieval we've now learned and learning. People are often poor judges of when they're learning well and when they're not learning well. Mass practice and rereading are among the most popular study techniques across domains, yet they are cited to be some of the least effective study techniques. Retrieval practice, that is pulling things out of memory, is more effective than rereading and reviewing notes as a study technique. Interleaved, is it spaced and interleaved, really. Spaced and interleaved retrieval practice leads to practice that is more difficult and effortful, but actually leads to more learning, even though it might feel like you're not learning more. And we know that. You can just use number 1 and 2, direct relationship between effort of retrieval and learning, as well as people are often poor judges of learning. 6, attempting to do something or learn something or perform a skill or answer a question before learning how to do it or being instructed on how to do it leads to better learning once you do learn it. It leads to deeper, stronger learning once you do learn it. The ability to discriminate between closely related things, that is, the underlying principles and patterns that make two things different, is a skill that can be developed through interleaved and varied practice, and it is a skill that leads to more, or through developing that skill, you can it leads to more ability in the future to discriminate against or discriminate between closely related things of similar nature and problem solve better in novel environments. When dealing with related things, I would think. 8. What would 8 be? There's no real empirical evidence to support the idea of that sticking to your preferred learning style, that is sticking to auditory information if you're an auditory learner, it leads to better learning. No evidence supports that. However, going broad does seem to be possibly supported by evidence using lots of different modes and resources, as well as there are modes and resources that are better for specific topics and subjects, such as visual information for geography and geometry, and verbal / language information for, say, poetry. Number 9, all previous learning requires all learning requires previous knowledge and learning. 10, there's no known limit to how much we can learn if we use elaboration. 11, a characteristic of mastery and expertise and mastery is the ability to pull out the important points of a subject or topic or experience, derive the underlying important points or principles or patterns, create a mental model from those points, patterns, principles, and then connect that mental model to other existing mental models that you have. 12, this is the more information you have to connect new information to, the quicker and better the learning will be. So it'll be faster and more effective. 13, man, we're missing one. Learning physically changes the brain, and we can become smarter. What would 14 be then? Something about testing. The effort relationship between effort and learning. Poor judges. Mass practice rereading. Retrieval practice spaced and interleaving practice makes it more difficult. What do we say for 6? Attempting to do something before learning it leads to more learning. Once you do learn it. 7, discrimination skills. 8 was what? 8 was what? Dang it, dude. What was 8? 8 was the learning styles. 9 was the all learning requires previous learning. 10, was it 10? Yes, 10. There's no known limit to how much we can learn using elaboration. 11, mental models. 12. Dang it, what are we missing, dude? Mental models information, and then the physically changes the brain. Something about a growth mindset, something about effort, retrieval, elaboration, generation. Think about generation. Dang it, dude. I don't know what. Good. 1, 2 good, 3 good, 4 good, 5 really good, 6 good, 7 good, 8 good. We're all susceptible to illusions of our abilities, and testing helps to better calibrate our perception of our abilities. It was about testing. All right, we're all susceptible to illusions of knowing. Testing is a great way to calibrate our understanding of our own abilities more objectively, okay, and accurately. That's the only one I missed. That was 9. Everything else you got. What is retrieval practice and why is it superior to passive review? Retrieval practice is the actively pulling information out of your brain, memories, reactivating them. Superior to passive review for 2 reasons. It leads to reconsolidation it leads to more like physical changes, reconsolidation of the memory itself, more potentially strengthening retrieval pathways, but also shows you what you do and don't know. So it's that double thing where it leads to more brain growth, brain change, and as well as it identifies weaknesses and gaps in neural knowledge. Retrieval is actively recalling information from memory, which strengthens neural pathways, improves long-term retention, unlike passive review, which creates illusions of knowing. Superior to passive review for those 2 reasons, plus passive review, we'll say hard, plus passive review leads to illusions of knowing. I'll actually put hard because I missed the kind of point that it's superior for 2 reasons, but also there's a weakness, even stronger flaw, as well as in the illusions of knowing. Golly, okay. That's what retrieval feels like. 8 minutes of like, what did we read about yesterday then? What did we learn? We didn't read much. It would have been structure building, right? We read about this analogy of building a Lego city or village, and that being analogous to structure building. Okay, so you get a box of Legos. This one doesn't have instructions on it, but it has a picture of what you're trying to build, and you dump it out, and you start by first laying the roads and start to add organize the pieces into little piles. These pieces are probably for the stadium. These pieces are probably for the bank. These pieces are for the apartment complex. These are for the park. And these are for the restaurant. And these are for the store, right? So you're putting these into different piles. And as you build these little structures, each one of these is like a main concept of a subject. At first, you're given a textbook. It's just a bunch of information. But as you start going, you start developing, okay, this goes in here for biology. I love biology as an example because I know the structures pretty well. Here's the genetics pile. Here's the cell biology pile. Here's the ecology pile. Here's the evolutionary biology pile. Here's the human anatomy pile, right? Okay. macromolecules pile. You can keep getting more and more complex as well, or more, and you can go within these, and you can even look into more details and the nuance within each structure. But that's like the analogy of structure building. Okay, all right, and then we also read about an example, an imaginary example, but that mirrors reality of someone who is a poor structure builder or a low structure builder. This is a woman that's telling a story about a 4-year-old boy she knows, but ends up talking about the mom and then the son or the daughter-in-law, and then all these other random events tied to them, and what their likes and preferences are, when really the story was about the 4-year-old boy, and the whole point of the story was completely lost because of all this extraneous fluff and information that was not important. That's kind of a characteristic of or an example of what a low structure builder telling a story would be like. All right. Anything else? Nope. That's it for yesterday. We're going to continue reading now, and I'll be back to recall a bit. All right. So we finished up the section on structure building, and we started the next section on rule learning versus example learning, or rule versus example learning. All right. Wrapping up the structure building section. This is kind of okay. Our research and knowledge and understanding of structure building is still early and still developing. We still have a lot of unknowns. Whether it's rule building is nature versus nurture, right? Is it largely nurture, or is it largely nature, or is it a split between them equally? Are some people just predisposed to be naturally more rule builders genetically? We don't exactly know, but I would say it's definitely not all nature. That would be my guess. Definitely not. The more you know, the better rule building or better structure building I think you get. Okay. What else we got? Structure building, empathy. Right. Low structure builders can basically be, it can actually structure build as equal to like high structure builders. If given like a text with questions interspersed throughout the text that have key questions directing them to like the main points, that brings up the structure building of low structure builders to, mirror high structure builders. So that's good. Overall, the section structure building was really about pulling out general key points, the key information from experience or just groups and batches of information, and then building mental models from those key points, and even applying them. But it's kind of finding the key points is the big thing. All right, the next section, rule learning versus example learning. It's pretty similar. Rule learning is similar to structure building. Rule learning is basically between problem types, you're learning the underlying principle, the underlying rules for doing the problem and solving new novel problems, whereas example learning is more characteristic of just memorizing examples, which is very inflexible and static and not very effective for real learning and useful learning. However, example learners can be can rule learn well by, instead of just memorizing example, they are tasked to compare similarities and differences between two problems. That helps them rule learn more. Gosh. All right. One other note. Possibly one of the reasons reflection as well as retrieval and testing are so effective. Another reason is potentially that they're naturally exercises in structure building. This is part of the structure building section, right? While I'm doing these recalls, when I'm taking notes, I'm pulling out the key information and ignoring all the extraneous information that's not important, right? So this is an act of structure building in some ways. So we're getting close. I will say these 14 main point recall, that flashcard's been taking a long time the last couple of days. So once we get through that, we'll free up another like 5 minutes per day. And so we've got about two pages left in this section, and then we have a takeaway section, which is 3.5 pages. So we really have like 5.5 pages left before we're done with chapter 6, which is crazy to me that we're almost done with chapter 6. That's crazy. We're really in the home stretch now. There's only 8 chapters. So that's it for today. Talk to you later. See you.